I don't know what to make out of it. I'd certainly say it's worth further investigation. By my standards, it's in my gray basket. Not black, not white, maybe. Worth following up on.
We then asked film expert Sergei Goncharov if he thought that the film's characteristics on this reel were consistent with the time period from which it was supposedly shot.
It certainly is consistent with the information on the can. It is negative. It's got the negative perforations. It's exactly what the information on the can indicated.
Sergei explains the significance of a flash frame, an interesting and possibly important characteristic of the film that was discovered.
All right, now, a flash frame, this is, of course, a flash frame is that piece of film that is, when you push the button on the camera and you start exposure and you stop the camera to stop the exposure, and then you restart the camera again. By virtue of inertia, the camera will sometimes expose either a flash of light, or if you point the camera away from the person in front of it, you will see some other subject matter. Those flash frames appear between the takes and sometimes show things and people that are not part of the scene itself. You have people that have nothing to do with the information that you've seen on a film before or after. Again, an individual in uniform. You see these people performing a procedure. You have somebody in civilian clothes, people that you have not seen before, as this is in a flash frame segment, which was not meant to be as the procedure that was being photographed.
Mr. Goncharov concludes that while the film's stock and camera techniques are consistent with KGB and Soviet government films of that period, he feels that the discrepancies with the subject matter require closer scrutiny.
Anytime you have subject matter of this type, any additional investigation is worthwhile. Absolutely.
Stanton Friedman was further intrigued by the medical techniques in the film.
I don't know what to make of these guys with what seem to be medical instruments, certainly in a medical facility, judging by the stuff on the wall. And it's interesting that you can see their faces, which is interesting from two different directions. You can tell their identity if you could find people that look like that. And they're apparently not afraid of contamination, ingesting anything toxic. Now, that could be that they'd already gone through this routine and somebody had said, hey, there's nothing bad here.
We then showed the film to Dr. Annette Ryan, a former lieutenant colonel with the Army Institute of Pathology.
The first thing that I notice is the way the doctors are dressed. They're dressed in these pristine white lab coats, and I think it would be more common for them to be dressed in scrubs or even butcher aprons, unless, of course, they know that they're being filmed and they want to look good. They also look very young, but that is consistent with forensic examinations, and that's because senior medical staff usually don't get involved in this type of procedure. I also notice that they're wearing rubber gloves, but they're not wearing any other protective gear. They're not wearing goggles. They're not wearing masks. They're certainly not wearing any biohazard suits. I would assume that's because they're not concerned with contamination. And this, of course, is typical of Russian-Soviet medicine. I mean, when we think of Chernobyl, just remember back that there was a terrible lapse in any type of protection. It certainly would not happen in the United States. I mean, it would be unheard of.
Next, Dr. Ryan commented on some of the specific medical procedures.
All right, what's happening here is that they're using dissecting scissors to open up the sternum, which is a common procedure at that time. He's using the proper tool. The way they're holding and using the various tools looks correct, which indicates to me these people know what they're doing. I would say there's little doubt that these are actual Russian medical people. Now, if you look closely at this procedure here, which is repeated several times in this footage, what they're doing is removing a piece of material. The one doctor refers to it as an organ or resembling an organ. Then the diener sniffs off a small sample, which is placed in a specimen jar for later analysis. Well, that's exactly what would be done in a forensic case or in the case of scientific research, for instance, if some new species had been discovered. They would remove very small pieces for later chemical and microscopic examination. The lead doctor also mentions a structure he describes as resembling ribs. And here you can see what indeed resembles a rib cage, as if this was the torso of some anthropoid or human-like organism.
Finally, though Dr. Ryan was unable to identify the subject matter, she believed that the techniques were consistent with those practiced in the Soviet Union during the late 1960s. We have little information about the specimen seen here, other than the pathologist's description and the KGB code name, Sverdlovsk midget. We wondered, though, how such a being might appear had it been recovered intact. Using only the images recorded on this film and the scant data available, technicians have constructed this 3D computer-generated model. Thus, with a bit of imagination and some forensic speculation, we have recreated what may have been the Soviets' possession of an actual being from another world. Information leaked from intelligence sources in the West indicated a belief that the Soviets were actually attempting to reverse engineer something not manufactured on this Earth. Whether we'll ever know the full truth about the supposed UFO crash in Berezovsky, one thing seems certain. If agents of the KGB or any other branch of the Soviet government did recover parts of a craft made by alien beings, they would have been extremely interested in examining all the materials very closely. No doubt Soviet scientists would have wanted to determine if the parts of the craft were truly of extraterrestrial origin. They would have inspected each piece down to the microscopic level and tested for various physical and chemical properties. And, of course, they would have wanted to take advantage of any new technology they could gain from the recovered materials.
We are unable to solve the puzzle of their physics. Our physics is based on quantum mechanics. Theirs is based on parallel worlds, a different kind of paradigm, a different understanding of history. It is similar to the effect of a TV set or a video camera would produce on people in the time when Pythagoras lived. Pythagoras would not understand it. That is the gap between them and us. That's why, however hard our engineers or technicians would try to decode their technologies, they would fail.